India's growth as a transformative force is one of the defining realities of the 21st century. For decades, the world has looked at power through a narrow lens, often defined by military strength, economic dominance, or historical influence. But today, that framework is shifting, and India stands at the center of this change. Its rise is not simply a matter of numbers on a chart or headlines about technology and trade. It is a story of a society with deep historical roots that is now shaping the future of the global order in ways that can no longer be ignored. The most striking element of this transformation is the role of India's people. With one of the youngest populations in the world, India possesses a demographic advantage that few other nations can claim. This youth bulge represents not just manpower, but imagination, creativity, and the hunger for progress. Young people are entering universities, founding startups, leading research, and joining the workforce in record numbers. Their aspirations reflect a belief that the future belongs to those who innovate, adapt, and lead with vision. When you see this energy concentrated in such large numbers, it becomes clear why India's rise has such profound implications. A young nation with the determination to advance does not wait for permission from history. It writes a new chapter of history itself. Economic transformation is another pillar of India's ascent. Once considered primarily a developing economy, India has steadily moved into the ranks of the world's fastest growing nations. Its industries span from information technology and pharmaceuticals to renewable energy and space exploration. Cities are expanding, infrastructure projects are multiplying, and entrepreneurship is flourishing at a scale that commands global attention. This momentum is not accidental. It is the result of decades of effort to open markets, expand education, and encourage innovation. For the global economy, India's emergence means that the balance of power in trade and commerce is diversifying. No longer can growth be dictated by a handful of nations. It now depends on cooperation with emerging powers like India that bring new markets, new ideas, and new opportunities. Beyond economics, India's democratic resilience gives its rise a unique character. In a world where authoritarian models are gaining ground, India continues to affirm the power of a democratic system to adapt and endure. It is a society of extraordinary diversity, languages, religions, traditions, that still seeks to move forward within a framework of representation and rights. This is not without its struggles, but it demonstrates a belief that progress can come through inclusion rather than exclusion, through debate rather than decree. That example matters not only to India's citizens, but to the global community that watches closely how a vast democracy navigates modern challenges. In that sense, India's rise is not just economic, it is also ideological, offering proof that democracy can coexist with rapid growth in the modern world. India's influence extends into global arenas that go beyond national borders. Its leadership in climate negotiations, peacekeeping missions, and regional stability highlights its growing responsibility on the world stage. For instance, when global leaders meet to address climate change, India's role is central because of both its vulnerabilities and its innovations in renewable energy. Its investment in solar power, for example, not only benefits its own citizens, but also sets a precedent for other developing nations that want to grow sustainably. In peacekeeping, India has contributed more personnel than many long-established powers, underlining its commitment to international cooperation. These actions illustrate that India's rise is not a solitary project, but part of a broader responsibility to shape global outcomes. What makes this transformation truly significant is how it reshapes the world's balance of power. For centuries, influence was concentrated in Western capitals and later shared with a few major powers. Today, India's emergence forces the global community to rethink assumptions about who sets the rules and who drives progress. This redistribution of influence does not mean instability, it means adaptation. Nations that once assumed permanent dominance must now learn to share space with rising powers. This is why India's rise is described as transformative. It compels the world to evolve, to accept that the future will not look like the past. But the most profound element of India's rise lies in its symbolic power. For billions of people in the developing world, India represents the possibility of progress without abandoning identity. It shows that a nation can draw on ancient traditions while becoming a hub of modern innovation, that it can embrace global integration while maintaining local culture. This balance is a lesson to other nations seeking a path between globalization and sovereignty. India's story teaches that development does not require uniformity, it requires authenticity coupled with ambition. All of these dimensions, youthful energy, economic growth, democratic endurance, global responsibility, and symbolic strength, combine to make India's rise a force that transforms not only its own destiny, but the destiny of the international order. It challenges long-held assumptions about who leads and who follows. It disrupts outdated hierarchies and compels the world to imagine new forms of cooperation. For some, that is unsettling. For others, it is inspiring. But for everyone, it is undeniable. The reality is that India is not merely rising, it is reshaping. And as it does so, it teaches the world that power in this century is not about domination, but about participation, not about preserving the past, but about embracing the future. The lesson is clear: the rise of India is not just India's story, it is the story of a changing world. Fear, competition, and opportunity for collaboration are three strands of the same story when it comes to understanding India's rise on the world stage. To some in the West, the rapid growth of India represents an unsettling shift in the global balance of power. For centuries, influence has flowed from Western capitals outward, shaping the rules of trade, finance, and diplomacy. But today, India's ascent forces the world to re-examine those assumptions. The fear comes not only from India's scale, its vast population, its growing economy, its technological advances, but from what that scale implies: a redistribution of power that challenges long-standing hierarchies. Fear, in this context, is not irrational. It reflects the human tendency to resist change. Nations that have grown accustomed to being the arbiters of global affairs naturally feel uneasy when new voices demand a seat at the table. India, by its very rise, insists on rewriting the script, shifting influence toward regions and people who were once considered marginal to the great debates of power. This is not a threat of aggression, but a threat of transformation. The established order must adjust to make space, and adjustment is never easy. Fear, then, is less about India itself and more about what its rise symbolizes: the end of a monopoly on power. Competition flows naturally from this fear. As India expands its influence in areas like technology, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals, and defense, Western nations are forced to respond. They invest more heavily in research, they seek to strengthen their alliances, they rethink their economic strategies. Competition, at its best, can be healthy. It sparks innovation, drives efficiency, and prevents stagnation. If the West sees India as a competitor, that recognition may push both sides to higher levels of achievement. But competition also carries risks. When it is framed solely as a zero-sum game, where one side's success means another's loss, it breeds mistrust and conflict. The challenge is to recognize that India's progress does not have to come at the expense of others. The world is vast enough for multiple powers to thrive, provided they approach competition with wisdom rather than insecurity. Yet alongside fear and competition lies a third path: opportunity for collaboration. And this is where the educational lesson becomes most important. The world today is too interconnected for any single nation, or even a group of nations, to solve its challenges alone. Climate change does not stop at borders. Pandemics do not respect passports. Economic shocks ripple across continents in days. In this context, India's rise should be viewed not as a disruption, but as an asset. Its innovation in renewable energy can contribute to global climate solutions. Its experience in large-scale digital infrastructure can help other developing nations bridge divides. Its role in global health, from vaccine production to affordable medicine, has already saved millions of lives beyond its borders. These are not threats, they are opportunities for shared progress. Collaboration does not erase competition. The two can coexist. Just as companies compete in the marketplace, while collaborating on industry standards, nations can push each other to excel while working together on shared goals. The West may feel uneasy about India's growing influence, but it also stands to benefit from it. Partnerships in technology, education, and trade can enrich both sides. Joint efforts on climate action can produce breakthroughs that no nation could achieve alone. And when democracies work together, they reinforce the values of freedom and inclusion that are under strain in many parts of the world. The deeper lesson here is that fear and competition are natural, but they do not have to be the final word. They can be transformed into motivation for cooperation. When rising powers like India are treated not as outsiders, but as partners, the global system grows stronger. Instead of clinging to an old order built on exclusivity, the world can move toward a new order built on inclusion. That shift requires humility from established powers who must accept that leadership is no longer theirs alone. It also requires responsibility from emerging powers who must recognize that influence comes with obligations as well as rights. What terrifies some in the West is precisely what should inspire confidence in the global community, the recognition that the future will not be shaped by a single nation or a single region, but by many. India's rise demonstrates that progress is no longer confined to one corner of the world. It is a shared endeavor, distributed among diverse peoples and cultures. That reality does not diminish the West, it enriches the world as a whole. In the end, the rise of India confronts the world with a choice. Fear can lead to division. Competition can lead to rivalry, but collaboration can lead to shared achievement, where every nation gains by working together. The challenge is to see beyond the discomfort of change and embrace the possibilities it offers. India's story is not a threat. It is an invitation to reimagine the future, not as a contest of domination, but as a partnership of equals. The nations that accept this invitation will not only overcome their fears, they will help build a world where progress is multiplied, not divided.